Often we hear the advice that we should listen to our heart, but we may not really understand what that means, what that entails. In fact, even the person suggesting it may not really understand it. We might think that it's some mystical or romantic idea, or even a bit of a cliche. Or we might think that it's a silly idea, a potentially harmful piece of advice. In fact, I was just reading an article about why you should not listen to your heart. And while the advice was well intended, what I found was that the writer had misunderstood what it really means to listen to your heart. And probably most of us either misunderstand it or are at least confused by it. And it may be difficult, for example, to discern between the voice of our heart and the voice of our head, between fear and intuition, between wisdom and wanting, and so on. So I wanted to see if we could clear this up just a little. So what exactly does it mean to listen to your heart? Are we talking about this physical organ in the body that pumps our blood? We call this organ the heart because it's long been considered to be the central organ of the body. Nowadays, it might be argued that the brain is that center, or maybe not. But what I'm getting at is that the word heart basically just means center. So whatever is the center of anything is referred to as the heart. But the heart that we're advised to listen to, what does that refer to? Where is our center? The center which this refers to is the very center of our being, the center of consciousness, the seat of awareness deep within us. So to listen to your heart means to listen to the very center of your being. But what does it mean to listen? To really listen? How does one listen? To listen, you must be silent. If you're speaking while someone else is speaking, it's very difficult to listen, to really hear them over the sound of your own voice. And it's very easy to misunderstand, to misinterpret. We might only hear a portion of what's being said and not get the entire message. So in order to listen to your heart, you must be silent. And not that you simply don't speak, but inwardly silent. Because inwardly, there's so much noise when you really begin to pay attention, that the mind is constantly chattering away, rambling, drowning out the voice of the heart. The mind is what most distracts us from hearing it. So to really deeply listen in any regard requires listening from a place much deeper than the thinking mind. Listen for that silent space behind the thinking mind. And don't confuse this to mean that we must silence the mind. Forget about trying to silence the mind. Just notice the silence behind it. We think that silence is the absence of sound, but actually silence is always there. Silence is the space in which sounds are occurring, in which thoughts arise and subside. So in the same way, that silence within us is always there, even when the mind is noisy. No one looks up at the sky on a cloudy day and thinks that the sky is gone. The sky is always there. The sky is that space in which the weather is occurring. And the weather is always changing, but the sky always remains unchanged, unmoved. So this is what we're listening for within ourselves, for that silent space in which the weather of thoughts and emotions are coming and going. And not to get caught up and carried away by the weather, but to just be in that still and silent space. And this brings me to another misconception. Often we think that listening to the heart means listening to our feelings. Feelings meaning our emotions, and listening meaning to follow, to be guided by whatever we're feeling in that moment. But our feelings, first of all, are transient, just like the weather. They can change very quickly from one moment to the next. And our feelings are often deceptive because of where they arise from. Most of our emotions are arising from thought, which is often based on a very limited or skewed perspective of reality. Or our emotions may be arising from biological impulses, from chemical occurrences happening in the body and in the brain. Often when we feel that we are falling in love, for example, it's the brain producing all these euphoric chemicals. So it's not much different than being under the influence of a drug. In fact, essentially it's the same thing. And so that's not a very reliable source of guidance. The heart that we're talking about here goes much deeper than all of this, all the way down to the very center of our being. And the advice to listen to it is precisely because all these other sources of information, the thinking mind, the emotions, the opinions and judgments of other people, are all unreliable. So to listen to the heart really means to listen very deeply, beneath and beyond all these various distractions, this mental noise, the rationalizations, the transitory feelings, to bring the attention into that space of silence and to dwell there. And really what that means, as you'll discover on your own when you do this, is that you're listening not merely to the heart, but from the heart. That deep beneath all the layers of thought forms, all the layers of false identification and interpretation and so on, that you are that space of silence, that space of awareness which is the witness of everything you see and feel and think and perceive. And so to listen to that still small voice within which speaks, not in words, but in silence. And if you still don't quite understand what that means, it's because I'm talking about an understanding which is beyond all intellectual and conceptual understanding. So if you want to understand, just listen. If you find this content valuable, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.